Hey there, my name's Turner Schwartz. I'm a service technician at Aquablast. Today I'm going to be going over how to check and replace the packings, your seals, in a Giant 300 series pump. If you have another brand of pump or a different style, it'll be a little bit different, but the concept will be the same. Hopefully this gives you a few tips on how to do it. First thing you're going to want to do is drain the oil out on the Giant pumps. When you take the head off, the oil will leak out the front of the pump. Some pumps you can take the head off without losing any oil, but on these we definitely do want to drain it first so we don't make a mess. Go ahead and put your plug back in, get that snugged up. While you're at it, on these there's a plug on the bottom as well. Go ahead and check that, make sure that's snug, which it is. Next thing it's always good to do, since we're getting into the pump, is just sort of make a visual check of the back end, the insides of the pump. That's fairly simple to do. Just got 4 Allen bolts here. They do have lock washers, make sure you don't lose those. Go ahead and take the back end off there. You can just visually inspect, make sure you don't have anything broken, check your bearings, make sure everything just looks healthy in there. You can also smell, see if you smell any real burnt oil. That's an indication it's been running too hot. You might have a bearing getting ready to go out. But if everything looks good in your pump, you can go ahead and flip it over. We can take the head off and get to our seals. For these, it's going to be a number 6 Allen to get our bolts out of the head. All right, once you have those off, might drain some oil out, some of the leftover oil. What you need to do, just take a small flathead screwdriver, go between the head and the body of the pump, and just back and forth, evenly apply pressure and work it off the plungers. This being a new pump, the seals are still pretty good, so it will come off harder than if you have an older pump with the seals all shot. Those tend to come off a lot simpler. Okay, once the head comes off, here you'll see sometimes your cases will stay with the pump, sometimes they come off with the head. It doesn't really matter either way. If they come off with the head, I like to just take my flathead screwdriver. There is a small weep hole in the bottom. Go ahead and just give it a little bit of a twist, get it free, and then you can pry up on it, and you should be able to work it out. Same thing goes for if they stay on the pump. Just go ahead and pry up through that weep hole and pop it off the plunger. Okay, once we're in here, it's always a good idea to just check your plungers. If you're changing seals, odds are you have water in the back end of your pump. A cracked plunger can also cause that to happen. Just go and take it's gonna be a number 14 socket. I'll take the plunger bolts loose. Gonna have a bolt, gonna have a small crush washer, and then your plunger. The plungers only go on one way. There is a small, one end is a little bit larger than the other, so if you forget how they come off, it's no worries. They only fit on one way. All right, once you have your plungers off, just take a rag, wipe them down a little bit. A lot of times you'll have a little bit of seal residue or some oil or something on them. Just get those cleaned up a little bit so you can look for cracks. The easiest way I've found to look for a crack is just go ahead and take, if you have a small pocket flashlight, shine that in the end of the plunger and just rotate it around, especially looking at the ends for cracks. If there is a crack, it'll be really obvious. It'll show up really dark as opposed to the rest of the plunger. Just go ahead and visually inspect those. I like to put the light on the side as well, just to look down in case you have a crack starting on the interior of the plunger. Just do that for all three. Just give a quick look. Sometimes the cracks are real obvious and huge. Other times they'll be just starting. But it's always better to catch them when they're small. We can go ahead and put those back on. However, we don't want to reuse the small washers that came off because they do crush when they're installed. So if you're going to be taking your pump apart, just make sure to get a few extra. I recommend putting a little bit of a blue Loctite on the threads of these. Since these do get there's a lot of vibrations going through them, it just helps them not work out. Go ahead and thread these back in. When you're putting it back in, just hold that washer to the top of the bolt. There is a notch in that bolt. If the washer drops down and slides under, you'll start clamping down on the bolt and it won't be good. So it's just the easiest if you hold that washer up, or as it's threading down, just keep an eye on it and make sure everything's not binding up or anything. All right, if you have a torque wrench, to tighten these down, it's 220 inch-pounds of torque. I know a lot of guys don't have a torque wrench. When I'm on a field, a lot of times I don't either, so I just like to choke up on my ratchet. Just get it nice and snug. You don't want to overly tighten or you can crack the plungers. Just get them tight and they're good to go. That's where the Loctite helps as well. If you don't have a torque wrench to get it to the specific recommended torque, that way it'll just, it'll keep them from backing out. All right, so now that we've checked the back end and checked our plungers, we're gonna go ahead and change our seals out. Essentially what you're gonna have, you have one seal that's gonna stay up inside of the head of the pump. Just take a small flathead screwdriver or a pick, reach in, and just pry that out. If you haven't had one apart before, it's always helpful if you just do one case and cylinder at a time. That way you always have one to look at to see how things go back together. That's just one way to not get lost. All right, so we'll go ahead and take our seals out of the cases now. One thing you will notice, there are 2 O-rings on each case. Those do not come with the packing kit. Those you need to purchase separately. They very seldom go bad. You can essentially just look at them, just feel them a little bit. If they're really crazy dry, that's about the only time you need to change them. Or if you actually have oil leaking out of your pump, it could be your oil seals and these O-rings. Typically, the oil seals don't fail. The oil seal is in the bottom of the case. Those are in a separate kit as well, so we're not going to mess with the black seal in the bottom of the case. Right now, we're just doing the water seals. Let's go ahead and take the brown one out. Under that, we have a little ring there, and then inside, if you haven't had your pump apart before, you're going to have a small an O-ring inside the case. That's just a wiper ring. It just sits in there. If it's up to me, I wouldn't put it back on because it's just going to make the reassembly a lot harder, and it literally does nothing in there. I have some guys that like to put them back on, and that's fine, but it doesn't affect anything. It'll just make your life a lot easier if you just take those out. Okay, so now that we have the cases torn down to this point, we're ready to put our new seals back in. Like I said, we want to go ahead and leave the black seal that is in the case. Leave that alone. That is our oil seal. If that does need replaced, essentially you're going to take it out just like we did the brown seals. So just take a pick or a screwdriver, pry it out. It will be quite a bit tighter. The new ones, you get it started, maybe put it on a flat surface, and press down because they go in pretty tight. But like I said, unless you visually have oil leaking out of your pump, those won't need to be replaced. What we're going to do first, we're going to take the black seals that were in the head, we're going to reinstall those. Now you'll want to see they're going to go groove side down. It looks like they go the other way, but they go, this is the direction they go, and to work them in, essentially you're just going to get one side started, just set it in an angle like that. Then take a screwdriver and just, with a little bit of pressure with the other hand, just start working in the edge. Just work your way around the seal, and then she'll go right in. There is I know Giant does make a special tool for this, but I find it easier just to use a screwdriver most of the time. And a lot of guys don't have that tool, so. Go ahead and take your case. The weep hole, are you going to want that facing the bottom of the pump? Just slide that over the plunger there. These the flat little washers, we're going to slide one of them over each plunger down into the case. Take your brown seals. Now these are going to be groove side up. Slide them over, get them started into the brass there. Once you got those started, we're going to go ahead and take our brass rings. These are sort of beveled. The wider edge, the edge with the lip, is going to go down. We want the thinner edge facing the head of the pump. Now to drive those on, I'm just using the seal tool I talked about because it's the right size. You can also just use a socket that will fit over top of the plunger, like a deep well. It'll just sit right on that brass, and we'll go ahead and tap that brass down, and that'll seat the seal in nice and even. We're going to take our last 3 washers here, put them over top. Go ahead and take the pump. Obviously you want your 3 bottom caps on the bottom side of the pump. Go ahead and get that started. Grab our head bolts here. All right, when we tighten the head down, we'll just pick 2 of your center bolts that are diagonal across from each other. Those we'll just work back and forth on those to just apply even pressure and work the head down evenly. Go ahead and just tighten them again in a diagonal pattern, and then the outside last, just to keep everything nice and even. You want them tight, but not overly tight. You can feel pretty well when it's wanting to stop. You don't want to go too far because it is just going into the aluminum body of the pump. Once we have the head on, since we went ahead and checked out the back end of the pump, we'll go ahead and put the back end back on. Wipe any debris that may have gotten on that surface there. Put your back case on, again, keeping your drain plug at the bottom of the pump. Take your number 5 Allen. Go ahead and restart all these bolts. All right, we're gonna go ahead and fill the pump with oil here. I like to set it on, if you have a small container or something, just to keep it level so we can see on our sight glass. If your pump just has a dipstick, that's fine. Go ahead and use that. If it does have a sight glass, the general rule of thumb is to fill it just over halfway on the sight glass. On these Giant 300 series pumps, we're just gonna use 20W50 oil. That's the same for a lot of the smaller pumps. Once you get into bigger pumps, then they do take different oil. We'll go ahead and get some oil going in here. Just watch your sight glass. It'll take a little bit less than a quart. Go ahead, if you have your dipstick, go ahead and reinstall your dipstick. This one just has the plug for storage and moving around. So this will need the vented dipstick installed before we put it on a machine. And that's your basic maintenance on a Giant pump.